What is up, you guys? Glitchiz here, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm bringing you the final part of my base series, and that is how to do all of the wiring. A lot of you have requested this video, and I apologize for it taking so long to get out. There was a few additions that I needed to add to the base first because I wanted to have this as an all-inclusive guide for all types of electrical and plumbing, and I didn't actually have any plumbing yet in the base, so I added a new little addition which we'll get a sneak peek of here. I'm going to do a whole nother vid about the addition here coming up, so keep an eye out for that. But on to the topic at hand, and that is doing the electrical work. I'm hopefully going to demonstrate how all the different switches, all the different wires and piping work, and what in my opinion is the best way to lay them all out. I will preface this in advance by saying that there is a feature, at least for yourself, that when all of this is set up and done with, you can actually hit one key on the keyboard and hide all of your electrical wires and plumbing. Unfortunately, as of right now, that only hides it for you. So ideally, you still want to set up your electrical in an efficient way. Because when you add new things onto your base, you want to be able to know where everything is and be able to add and take away things easily without having to worry about wires being all crisscrossed everywhere and not knowing what's what. And also, for the people that aren't that are coming to your base and visiting, they won't see all these ugly wires all over the place. So I'm going to show you all the tips and tricks to hiding things and how to wire different things in different ways to make it as clean and as efficient as possible. So let's jump right into it. So for this base, and by the way, this will obviously be geared towards my base, which a lot of you went and rebuilt, which I'm flattered. Thank you guys. I'm glad you enjoyed the design. But for this particular base, before you do any electrical work, the first thing you need to do is math. I know it sucks, but it needs to be done. So depending on how many generators you have, you need to calculate what your max number of wattage for your territory is. Now, as you can see, I am no longer over there in the middle. I got a perk for the hydraulic generators, which are actually better than the solar panels that I had by like almost 10 watts. So it increased my wattage output by like almost 100 points, which I definitely needed for the addition that I added, which you guys will see in a minute. So I moved it closer to the water to take advantage of the hydraulic basically generators. Now, each of these by default, if you go into your build menu, will generate 30 watts total. Your base might have less depending if you're going with solar or biomass, things like that. Depends on what level you are. But at max level, what I'm using here is 30 watts. Now, I also have a perk called Electrical Technician or something like that. Let me double check here and I can show you. And this is going to be a big important factor as well, because this is what allowed me to get as much wattage as I have. It's called Electrical Expert. And basically what that does, it allows me to not only build one extra generator, so another 30 watts on top of what I normally would be able to craft, but each of those generators that I build get plus 2 watts on top of that. So now I have 7 total, and each one by default will basically give me 32 watts instead of 30, just because of this perk. So by default, it'd be a couple hundred watts. Now, what I do and what I recommend you guys do is to run at least 1 or 2 electric eel deviants. And you can get this by fishing at any of the docks in the major towns and whatnot. Just cast out, and you actually, I believe, get a little higher chance even during basically those fishing events. I might show a clip here where I got back-to-back electric eels, one right after another. So they definitely increase the drop rate of these guys, but you want to run at least 2 of them, 1 or 2 of them, and they'll increase, depending on their skill rating, your generator that they're controlling by another 10 to 12 watts. So for me, my default is 32 watts a piece, but the 2 that I have deviants on are actually generating 44. So I did the math, and my total wattage for the entire base for me personally is 248 watts. Now, once you know the total wattage of your base, then you can start calculating out the things that you want to add to it, and just make sure that the stuff that you're going to be leaving on at all times is going to take a chunk of that away. So basically for me, if we go back into the base here, that would include things like your refrigerator, your stove, maybe your fuel pumps for crude oil, your mining drills, your advanced synthesis benches, these type of things, your furnaces. This is stuff that you're going to want to have on at all times. So for me, I have basically the 2 electric furnaces, 3 advanced synthesis benches, my stove, and my refrigerator, as well as 3 crude oil pumps that I have on land, just to pump crude oil. Those are 10 watts apiece, and these upgraded mining drills, which are 15 watts apiece. So depending on what you want to add, could be less, could be more. For me, for example, and the only reason I'm saying this now is because you just want to be able to check off that once this chunk of power is gone, the other 2 things that we're going to want to wire have to fall within the remaining wattage that you have left. If it doesn't, then you're going to have to cut down somewhere. So for me, my stuff that I want to keep on at all times comes to basically 107 watts. So you subtract the 107 from my total 248, and that basically gives me 141 watts to play with. Now, normally, 140 watts, if you're building a farm, putting up 12 turrets, things like that, are going to be well over a total of 141 watts. So that is where switches come into play. And I'll get to those in a minute. But before we go up to the switchboards, let's worry about the core things we want on at all times. So for that, what I do is I start with 1 electrical wire, which if we just go back to the generators here, open up. So the things that are going to be on at all times technically don't need to be hooked up to a switch. So what I do is I just hook 1 wire directly to, well, first off, what you're going to want to do, is you're going to want to daisy chain all of your generators together. So I have a wire going from that one to that one, that one to that one, that one to that one, all the way down the line so that they're all connected. Then the final one is what I feed off to all my different things. So for the first wire, for all the stuff that has to be on at all times, I just directly connect it. So I have 1 wire going from there, and that basically cuts underneath my foundations to 1 little node right here. And it's basically going to be this bottom one. So that is going to be the start of all of the power for things that want to be set up. Now, these little nodes, what they do is it basically lets you organize and reroute your wires. And there's a bunch of different types of them. So we have flat ones that can go flat on the ground, horizontal ones, which is the ones I'm using where you can put them sideways, vertical ones where you can hang them from the ceiling, or these pylons basically where if you're outdoors and you don't have a pillar and you just want something that's off the ground, you can throw one of these down and that will basically allow you to get that same little tiny node thing but on its own little stand. Personally, I don't really use these because I like hiding all my stuff in corners and things like that, but that is another option that you can do. So let's go ahead and delete that. And so now we have a little power node right here, one of which is running under the base and directly connecting to our generators. So we know all of the power that we have, all 248 watts, are being pumped to this little node. From here, all of the stuff we want to power on at all times that we don't have to worry about hooking up to a switch, you can just directly connect to this node. So I have my 2 furnaces connected to this node. And then what I did to be able to hide these a little bit better is I put one of those secondary nodes in each corner of the base, just in case there's something in one of those corners closer to that side of the wall that I want to run a wire to. And I also did that around the middle. So what you can do here is basically run a little node on each of your 4 pillars. And before you even connect to that main power line, just connect with a wire, daisy chain in a big circle, all of those nodes around the bottom line. So that way, if in the future you want to move things around, you can put one of those little nodes in any corner that you want, and you'll have a nearby little node that you can just stretch to a corner and connect, and you'll know that anything connected to that will be connected to power. So that's basically what I did for my kitchen set. So I have this power here, that goes into the middle, and because all of these are connected, I can then run from this one, put one in the corner over here, and feed that one to my fridge and my stove. That way it's tucked up along against the wall and not like hanging from somewhere in the building. Within 2 wall distances, 2 wall widths, it'll dip down enough to where you don't see it on your floor or anything. It'll just be only visible in the corners. So I put one in this corner, fed it to the main circle in the middle, and that powers the stuff along this wall. Same for my basically synthesis benches. I had basically a cable right here, fed that one to the corner, and then this one in the corner here powers all 3 of the wires for my synthesis benches. So it's just, you want to be organized and make little checkpoint nodes basically where you can feed off of this line and hook things up that are closer so that your wires aren't crisscrossing across your base. You want to have them going and being out of sight as much as possible. So once you basically hook up all these secondary nodes and you get all of these hooked up, then you want to go to your outside. So now my mining drills, for example, these I just connected to the nearest corner basically node that I have connected to the main line. So now those are always going to be connected to the full power. Same thing with my crude oil pumps. Those I have just directly connected to whatever nearest corner node that is connected to my main line. So once all of those are connected up, now we know that because that line is a direct connection to our generators with no switch, power will always be going to them and being turned on at all times. So you never have to worry about these secondary items that you want being turned off. So once you have your main stuff done, then we can head up and start focusing on the switches, because turrets, for me, I have 12 of them. The turrets cost 72 watts. So that's a check mark. We have 140 spare watts after all of this stuff is used. All of the main stuff that are always turned on, we have 140 watts to spare. So my 12 watts, my 72 watts for my turrets, you can check that one off because that's less than 140. So as long as I have them hooked up to a switch and I can turn them on and off, once that 72 watts gets turned on, I'll know that all my turrets will be working and nothing down here will get shut off. So let's head up to the power room and start talking about switches. So I didn't bother. We can technically get rid of this one. This is the one that I said was going to be in my previous video for like all the things you want to turn on. Realistically, if they're always going to be on, you don't need a switch for it. So for me, my turrets are on this node. Now, to set up the turrets, basically how switches work, you have multiple different types to work with. You basically have a one that goes on the wall, which is the one you see here. And then similar to the pylon, you have a pylon-based switch, which I like to put near my deviants sometimes, things like that, to make it more organized, because you can put them right next to the container. That's an option that you can do. And just so you know, I probably won't go into too much depth on the deviant room, but I did the exact same thing for the deviant room as I did for the bottom floor. I just put these little lines, like a core line, around the basically secondary perimeter. And if I wanted to, I could feed one main line up and connect that to a switch if I wanted to turn them on and off at any given point. But back to the turrets. So for the turrets, we're going to want a secondary line. And now the way switches work is you need one line going directly to your generators, and then the outline is what goes to all the things that you want powered. So the bottom one is the one that is your input. That's your generator, and it's going to be the first one that you connect. So we have one line going down, and just to organize it, I have basically a little node here, so it's straight, another one in the corner, and then if we go into build mode and follow this down the line, that node basically goes all the way through the floors into this secondary node on the top. And the reason I did this is because I want another secondary chain going around the base, because our turrets go all the way around the base, to connect outwards towards our turrets. The other tip that I want to give you guys is if you're on a PvP server, enemies, when they're invading your base during things like a stone extraction, they can target your basically little power nodes and kill them. If you have these power nodes in a corner on the outside of your base, they can be targeted very easily and destroyed. And if one key node gets destroyed, it could turn the power off on all of your turrets, for example, and break the connection. So you want to make sure that all of your power nodes that you're connecting are on the inside walls of your base. The wires can't be shot, so they can go through walls and connect to whatever you want, but make sure the nodes that you're connecting to are on the inside of your base. That's a little pro tip. So once we get the secondary node, this is basically the main line coming from the basically base of our switch to go to our generators. And because my generators, because my generators are on this side, I basically had this corner as my main basically hub for the starting point of all of my nodes. So this is the starting point of the node where I had all my everything to turn on. I got another one, which is the starting point for all my turrets. And then the third one, which I'll get to last, is the starting point for all of my stuff for my farm that I made. So for the second one, that's going to be our turrets. So basically to start out, you're going to want to connect one line to the main power. that main power will then route up directly to your switch for the turrets, which is basically what this one's doing. You can kind of see it dipping down, following the line all the way down to this node. And then the node for the turret connects to the one that's connected to the generator. So now we have a line going directly to the switch, and then from the switch, it's wrapping down the pole and feeding another circle around the base that connects to a secondary node that our turrets are connected to. So if I grab like this one here, for example, you can kind of see this. I have it tucked down just for visibility. But when I lift that up, you can see that it's wrapping to the nearby corners so that they're all on the same link, but it's also connected to my two turrets that are on the outside of the wall. So you want to feed your wires from the outside through the wall to a connecting node that's on the inside. So that way it can't be shot and taken down by enemies. So let's go ahead and plant this down. And you basically want to do this, excuse me, for all of your turrets. So that's basically what I did. I changed things a little bit around because mine is the territory purification base. And once I set my base up along the water, we realized that the deviants weren't spawning on the water side. They were only spawning in the front. So now, unlike my base tour video where I had all the turrets going all the way around 360, I removed the ones from the back and put them more forward so that they can actually shoot something and not just stand there and go to waste. So that's why I have more turrets on the front now, is because I only need to defend the front. But it works the same way. I just connected all these turrets up and basically fed lines. I actually disconnected these ones because I just moved these. So we can go ahead and connect a line here. This will be a good chance to show this off. Run through the wall and connect to the same. You can connect multiple wires to one node. So connect this same one to the wire that has the other turrets on it. Same thing for this one. Bring this over here. Connect that one to the top. So now those two turrets and those two turrets are all connected to this one power node. Same thing in this corner, because these are kind of kitty corner. I have those two connected to one node. Those ones I got rid of. These two and this one. Actually, these are the ones I'm going to have to add. So we can go ahead and add that. This turret will go onto this one. And then I moved this one over as well. And also, I know I mentioned in my build video, the tutorial on how to build the base, that I didn't like using the fly mode when building the base. You definitely want to use the fly mode when you're doing wires. It's your best friend, because it's really hard as a character to get behind all of your furniture and stuff. But in the fly mode, you can get real up close to these little joiners here, these nodes, and it makes connecting them a lot easier. So there you go. So now we have all four of those turrets connected to this one node. Same thing in this corner. These two turrets are connected to this one node. And now once all the corners are done, you want to connect all of them together so they're on the same loop. So all the corners are connected, and then you'll notice that there's one extra line right here, and that corner basically connects to this one, which then connects to this one, which then connects to this one, and puts them all on the same loop so we know they're working together. So if you think about it, it's generator to the bottom of the switch, comes out of the switch, comes down to the first node of your loop. That loop then goes around the entire base, and the little offshoots connect to the things you want to power up. So that's basically how I did the turrets, is hiding everything in corners along the seams of different wall beams, stuff like that. Just feed them through the wall to a node that is close by. And then once you get all of them individually connected, connect them all together as one big loop, because you could connect multiple wires to the same node. One big loop, and then just secondary outcroppings for all the extra stuff that you need. So that is how you do your turrets. And now if you look, these are going to be non-functional because my turrets are turned off. So right now, if you look, all of these turrets are non-functional. Non-functional. And that is because the switch has been turned off. Now if we go up, kind of staying backwards here because I don't want to spoil the farm yet. And we go down to our power node area. Red light means it's off. Now if we switch this to green, now all of that wattage that wasn't being used is now circulating through. And when we go to the bottom now, As long as everything is set up right, all of these turrets should now be active. There you go. 6 watts being used. It's in the green. In the green. In the green. So as you can see, none of these were active before, but because we set it up through the switch and we turn the switch on, now it reverts the power. Now you're wondering, well, why? What's the point of using a switch? Well, if you were only using your main stuff in the turrets, you may have enough power to run all of it all at once, and then you wouldn't need for switches. But if you were to add something like a bigger garage or a farm, like I'm about to show now, that could take up a ton more power that might go over that 141 or potentially lower wattage that you have left after your main stuff is used. And if all of your turrets are turned on, you're not going to have enough to power that stuff. So because my turrets are only used during the extractions, when I'm not doing an extraction, I can turn that switch off, and all 72 or 80 watts of that power could just get boosted back to the generators to use on other things, like my farm. So let's go over here and turn these off. So now we've got a bunch of extra power, and then we can go to the farm. So as you can see, looks a little bit different now. We don't have a stairwell anymore. If you watch my base tour video, I used to have a stairwell over here that went to the roof. Well, we kind of completely nixed the roof, and now I turned it into a giant greenhouse farm. And I'm going to make a whole nother video showing off the details of how the farm is set up and go over the cooking and stuff that goes along with that, with the ingredients you get from your farm. And that's where I think I'm going to share that cool menu item that our HiveMate built, because a lot of you guys wanted to see that menu, that custom menu. So that'll be in the next video after this one probably. But let's head up to the farm and go over that. So here we are. We are at the beautiful Glitch Synapse Stronghold Farm. 70 crops and only 15 watts to power it all. Super efficient setup, and I'm going to go over it here. So we already know the turrets are good. We have 141 watts to spare with this build with my generators. The turrets were only 72. Check mark, that works. As long as we're using a switch, it's good. Turn it off, we get that power back. Now we just have to make sure that our farm isn't using 141 watts, which it won't. So what I have is basically a brewing barrel, that's 10 watts. A osmosis water purifier for the water pumps, that's 10 watts. A water basically pump, that is 1 watt. Then we have... I'll go over this in more detail when I do the farming video, but we have multiple plots of crops, and technically this could be a little wider, but I didn't like the look of it, and I figured 70 was enough. But what I found out was, normally I recommend doing 3x3 grids, but as long as your light is high enough, and as long as your boxes are tight enough, you can do this, a 3x3 grid with a hole in the middle, plus an extra row on either side. So 6, 12, 13, 14, no, 6, 12, 13, 14 crops per plot, and 1 water sprinkler in the middle will power every single one of them and give them all perfect water, is what I found out. I ran a test where I filled in the middle and put 1 hose here and 1 hose here, and basically doubled the power usage, but I found out that putting 1 in the middle is enough to do a plot this size, and you can do 14 crops with just 1 sprinkler and 1 light. Now, if you did just flat ceilings right here, I have another guide. Feel free to check it out on like a secondary advanced like water setup, and I go over the lamps. The same concept is here. The lower that you have your light, the smaller the cone of light, and the less crops that it's going to like irradiate on. But if you raise up the light, it's just like a physics-based system. When you raise it up, the cone gets more dispersed and covers a larger area. So if you put it up high enough, which is why I built these arched ceilings in the greenhouse, with the light this high, I'm able to cover all 14 crops as well with 1 light. So you don't need 2 lights. As long as it's high, covers everything. Now, if you look at the wattage, and that's the main thing I'm trying to get to here, is for one of these sprinklers, it is 2 watts, and one of these lights is only 1 watt. So 3 watts times 5 is 15 watts total to cover the entire farm. 15 watts for the farm, 10 for the barrel, that's 25. Another 10, I think it is, for this, that's 35. and then 1 for the water pump. So 36 altogether for the farm itself. The other thing that we obviously need is our water pumps to pump the water up. And that is where the most wattage is going to be used up. And I've got 5 of them going, pumping water, and each of those are 10 watts. So total for my farm comes to basically 86 total watts, which you can check the box off. It's under the 141 watt total that we have remaining. So as long as it's hooked up to a switch, we're good to go. So now that we know we have enough wattage to do everything we need, we can start hooking it up. And for this, I did the exact same thing that I did with the turrets because I want everything to be hidden. So I started with one key node that is directly connected to the generator. So from the generator to the node, and that top node is going to be considered the go-to power node for my farm switch. So if we go into build mode, you follow that up straight up. I got one right here to just keep it straight. Keep going, keep going. Same thing here, keeps it straight. And then we get to right where the farm switch is. That goes from the corner over and then directly into the switch. So that line, when you follow it down, goes straight from the bottom of the switch directly to the generator. Now from the outwards, what I did is I put a couple here just to keep it along the seams and be neat, to keep the wires out of the way. Going out of the switch, into the corner, extending out to the outside edge, and then up the wall, tucked in the corner, to where the farm is located. And then from here, this becomes the main power node for all the things that need electricity in the farm. So one line is going to the water pump that allows the water to come up. One line is going to the purifier. One line is going to the barrel. And then what I did for the sprinklers so that it stayed neat and didn't have crossing wires and stuff is I did the same thing I did with the turrets. I put one node basically in each corner, as well as one node here to basically direct the one that needs to stick out for our sprinklers. So these wrap all the way around, daisy chain, connect into the corner, connect in the corner, connect in the corner, connect in the corner, connect in the last corner, and then back to the beginning. So now we know we have one solid loop of power that goes all the way around. And then from there, we can add ones in between for each section that we need. So I have one that is right here in the middle, went from here to that corner, and then from here to that corner. That one splits off and goes to the basically sprinkler, and also splits off and goes straight up, connecting to a node here to keep it out of the way and along the beam and up to my light. So I basically have a little offshoot of the main line, a secondary line that is in the middle that breaks off to each sprinkler. And then the same thing over here. So this line comes around for main power. I stop, put a breakpoint in the middle of the wall. That goes to the sprinkler. Another one goes up the wall to the light. Continue on. Do the same thing for this side. And you do that same thing all the way around. So a line here, get to the middle, do a breakpoint. That goes to the sprinkler. Another one goes up, leads to the light. And you do that all the way around until you get back to the main line again that's connected to power. So that is how I did the farm. Now, one trick that I would like to do, as you can see, is my piping is not as clean as I would like it. Unfortunately, I went, if I go into build mode, a little crazy and made the most elaborate, basically roofing greenhouse design, custom design that I could possibly think of to make this thing look really cool and unique. And in the process of doing that, not only did I reach the perfect 700 structure cap, but I also unfortunately reached my max facilities cap. And the facilities are what all of these water pumps and these nodes, that's what all those count for. So every time you place one of these down, it's going to basically subtract, or add rather, to your total for the amount remaining of facilities that you can add. Now, what you can do, and this is a little pro tip, shout out to Ralphie, our professional shelf of the hive. She's big into farming, and she showed me this is a little insider tip that I'm going to give you guys, is even though these water pumps here that force water to go in a different direction require power to move water, they also work on gravity and technically don't require electricity if you only want to use them as a cosmetic fix. So what you could do, in theory, and what I was hoping to do, I just unfortunately don't have enough points, Actually, I just deleted a bunch of nodes. I may be able to, so I can show you this as an example. So what I could do is if I go into functional and I choose a water pump, as long as this water pump is, because it's a gravity-based system, or not gravity, physics-based system, as long as it's lower than the valve on the purifier where it's going to be coming out of, it will flow still in the correct direction. So I could put one here, for example, and then instead of having my wire crossing along this line here, I could remove this wire, or this pipe rather, and then take the pipe and go to here instead. So that way it's along the wall and it's kind of out of the way. And then from here, go and do a pipe to my sprinkler. So as you can see, the pulsing blue line, even though I don't have any power connected to this, it's still a physics-based item. So if you're only using these basically as nodes, basically what I'm doing right now is I'm turning one of these into a node. The nodes are only for electrical wires. These are basically the node equivalent for piping. And that's a little pro tip. Most people think you can only use these if you need to actually power something from the ground up to a higher location. But as long as these are lower than the valve of your purifier, it will still flow in the right direction, and you can go from the purifier to the pump and then into whatever you want and redirect those lines. So ideally what I would do is I would probably get maybe 8 or 9 of these, and I would run one in the middle, in the corner, in the middle, in the corner, and all of this piping would just go through and meet up. I have a couple points here. Let's just do it on the fly. So this ain't gonna work right now because of this little thing here. We'll just move this over for now. But if I want, go into a pump, make sure it's lower. Just saw it green there for a second. No, this works. I'll obviously fix this after the fact, but technically, because you can hook multiple pipes up to these as well. So no power, but I can still go here, go into build mode. Connect a pipe. Connect a pipe. Now we've got a line going this way. So this will basically doing the same thing this node is doing, but for piping. Add one here. This would go right here on this wall. Connect a pipe, and that would go to this one. Oops. B. Oh, this one's gonna have to, because it's all gravity based, this one's gonna have to be lower. Well, maybe once it's more than one, you have to, maybe that's what we meant. I would have to connect power, 1 watt of power to that. But you see what I mean. Like, even if you have to pay the 1 extra watt, we've got plenty of watts to spare. As long as you have enough facility points, you could connect with the node, this basically same pump up to power, and force that water all the way around the perimeter, so that way you don't get piping lines going through the middle of your base for other people to see. And you would basically run your lines around the pipes around the outside, same way you did the electrical, and have a blue pump coming from this node, for example, going to the hose. So there's a few different tricks that you can do to kind of rearrange your piping so that it doesn't crisscross over. Now, if you're playing solo, that doesn't really matter, because I'll end the guide on this, is you can basically hit B and go into build mode, and then if you hit L, it hides all of your wires and piping. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't hide it for other players, so if you have Hive members and things like that coming to your base, they still will see all of your piping. Hopefully, that gets changed in the future, and the devs make it invisible for everyone in your party. As long as you are in your territory, I feel like it should recognize that you're in your territory and make it visible or invisible for everyone. But yeah, if you're just solo and you don't want to bother looking with it, you can hide everything. So on a day-to-day walkthrough, it does look a lot cleaner. But like I said, you still want to kind of follow this guide and make it as clean as possible. Because if I want to build any other thing, like a fuel basically conversion addition onto the base, where I have to hook more power up to some basically refining equipment and stuff like that. If you have your wires going all over and you don't know exactly where everything is routed, not only will it take a ton more time to basically hook new things up, but if you want to keep track of your power, you have big additions that are getting added without them hooked up to a switch, you might not have enough, and it could basically auto turn off things in your base that you wouldn't want turned off. Because that's kind of what happens, is if you have too many things that take up too much power, the territory kind of like randomly chooses things that it wants to turn on and off and routes power how it wants. But with switches, you can kind of control that. So yeah, that is pretty much the guide, you guys. Hopefully you understood that. I know for the water pumping, I forgot to mention that. I have all 5 of those pipes going directly from the water pumps up to that powered one to feed it into the purifier. You won't be able to pull water from a lower elevation to a higher elevation without one of those little water pump things. So just attach that to a wall and hook power up to it, and that will force it to go in any direction you want. So yeah, those are the little tips and tricks. Hopefully that helped. I was going to try and do this from scratch and build it, but there's a lot of pieces to this base that I wanted to make sure were working properly before I did the demo. But I think you guys should have the idea by now. Just tucking things in. These nodes are basically your best friend. Feeding them along the corners of walls, along under the floor of your foundations, things like that. Any way that you can reroute the wires to not cross any walkable area of your base, that is the best way to do it. So yeah, that is pretty much it. If you guys found it informative, be sure to smash that like button, comment down below. I appreciate all of your guys' feedback. Also, if you want to keep up to date with my future content, like I said, I have a ton more videos planned. Consider subscribing and turning that notification bell so you don't miss any of the alerts. Lastly, if you want to join a killer community of like-minded gamers, feel free to check the links down in the description and join us on the Discord. We've got almost 1,000 members in there now, many of which are playing Once Human. So hopefully you jump in and we see you guys around here soon. But until the next one, hope everyone has a great day, and we'll see you all later.